we were very inspired when we saw that the next month is courage, because this is something I think we all need. And I would like to present our speaker, Jorma Sarv. He's the founder of the Creativity Lab and also head of international program for Estonia for the 100th anniversary. And the rest I think Jorma will tell himself about.
Thank you, Marina. Good morning. My name is Jorma, and I am a strategy writer. For the last 10 years, I've been writing strategies, mainly in the field of culture, also creative industries, sports. And I'm really thankful for that kind invitation. I think that it's a very important topic for people who want to experience new challenges and situation in their life. Nevertheless, I don't know, how brave do you feel today? Do you feel brave? It's actually quite a tricky question. As told, I'm a strategy writer, so my first attempt when trying to figure out a subject is to find a framework, some sort of good ground to build up the topic. And to be really honest, I feel less brave than the moment when I accepted this invitation right now, because I didn't manage to find a very good strategic platform to talk about courage. But as Winston Churchill have said, it takes a courage to stand up and speak, but it also takes courage to sit down and listen. So I really wish you to be brave and stay with me when I try to answer a couple of questions that I still found very interesting. Nevertheless, I won't give you a presentation about motivation of creative people with different kind of statistics, how brave they are and how much courage there is actually in the creative industries or in the culture sector. I don't have 150 slides. Actually, I don't have any slides. I tried to figure it out with your kind help and attention to reach out the question, is there actually a plan B for the ones who have decided to follow their inspiration? I found two kind of definitions for courage. First of one says that it's the ability to control your fear in a dangerous or difficult situation. Well, this is me at the moment. I don't think that it's very dangerous to be here, but it's, like I told you, a bit difficult still, and I try to manage. The second one is to be brave and confident enough to do what you believe in. Well, that goes rather well, isn't it? I still think that we shouldn't talk about the courage in terms of the way how we read it in our childhood from our favorite books like Dumas or Scott or even Tolkien. We're not going to talk about war heroes, the Hollywood blockbuster scenarios. These are all very good things, but maybe not the focus of our question today. It's also, I think, not so important today to talk about the success stories that we all know. For instance, I'm quite sure that it takes a lot of courage to present a completely new event. This is the 10th edition of the CreativeMornings Tallinn, but in a week we will see the 10th edition of Tallinn Music Week. And I think it was a rather brave thing to do, to really go out there and say that no, we don't have to do it in Riga or in Helsinki or in Stockholm. We have to do it in Tallinn. And this is the completely new quality of Estonian music industry and the internationalization of our forces in a way. These are all great examples. There are many more. For instance, another brave thing that happened a couple of years ago, when the Estonian Maritime Museum opened the seaplane harbor, then perhaps you remember that one of the first big exhibitions they organized was Titanic. It was a huge risk. They really took a lot of effort and a lot of strategy and a lot of planning and organized that event. And if there would have been a failure, we would still feel it. But it went very well. They were really confident that they did it, and it gave them enough funds to begin another project. Where I want to put our focus today is actually a bit like in a mood of, allow me to say that, in the mood of Chekhov, in the mood of the people who are not there in the spotlight, who are there, but who are not perhaps known for their great success stories, but their real consistent and non-compromising activity or action. And there are 3 questions I'd like to ask from you. The first one is that if we observe the behavior of the creative people, is it actually courage or is it just non-rational behavior? Because sometimes I feel that it's just, you know, you can't describe it as a big sort of act of bravery. When you read some of the business plans, it just sounds, you know, something else. Another thing, another question, is it courage or bravery to be honest about it? When should one remind them that, no, you're not being brave, you're just being, you know, a bit too optimistic, if you say it diplomatically? And the third question, is there a plan B, or are there any situations where there definitely this kind of plan B does not exist? But let's begin then from the very beginning. Let's begin and take the path that there usually is for the creative minds. I had the privilege to study fine arts. So this part is completely from my own experience. Here I feel that I have some sort of a framework around me. When I was in 4th grade, then I suddenly discovered that I can sing in tune. Before that I just pretended, but then, I don't know why, suddenly it just happened to work. And of course, like every, you know, proud family, they also suggested me that perhaps I should study music. So I did. And when there was a time in the high school to really say and decide should one go to study law or history or business, then I did the non-rational thing. I went to the Academy of Music, and when I stepped in from the doors of the academy, I didn't think of a career that is modest. I didn't think of that I will be this, you know, somebody in the choir in the 4th row, the one with glasses, you know. I thought that I'm going to be in front of that orchestra and in front of that choir, and I were going to conduct the whole thing and do it, you know, throughout all my life. Well, it didn't go like that, but this is a different story. I didn't want to focus on that. I wanted to say that on that moment, we, in a way, project a future according to the vision that is most desirable. And when I think about these first years in the academy, then nobody told me about the other aspects of that kind of career. For instance, when we take a usual creative entrepreneur, if you go to the design or architecture or handicraft or places like that, then we see that we have more and more companies in Estonia in the field of creative industries, but they are smaller and smaller. The trend is there like for 10 years already. So what it means that when you have 1 or 2 people in your company, maybe 2.5, statistically, I don't know, 2.8 or 1.7, whatever it means, or sometimes even 0.7, another tricky thing, then you are what? You are the creative leader, the real core of the company. Then you're also an accountant. Then you are the manager of the support services, the manager of logistics, You are all that. I give you even a better example. I also work with sports, and some years ago, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, Estonia decided that we should move towards the system of sport clubs instead of system of sports academies or sports schools. So what happened was that every coach or every trainer organized their own club. And if I give you a parallel, then it would mean that, can you imagine that somebody approaches you, Usain Bolt, and says that, you know, you're a very good sprinter, you do 100 meters or 60 meters, excellent, but, you know, do some decathlon as well. Just, you know, because this is the way how you can manage your life. You know, take some long jump, for instance. Well, Usain says that, okay, I mean, I'm a good runner, I'm very fast, I have a, like, good energy there, I can really jump there's no problem, long jump, come on. I mean, more than 7 meters without a problem. Okay, very well, thank you, Usain, you're doing great. Now, we have some high jump as well. Well, it's out of my comfort zone, of course, but I try to manage. How about javelin throw? Well, if it's really something I have to do, and in the end of the day, the same working day, 1,500 meters. Well, it's not the same Usain that comes back next day. Do you agree? So now it's the bottleneck that is there for, I think, hundreds of thousands of creative professionals every day. And I think that if we try to define what is the drive that is keep them going, if it's not the big light of success stories day by day, then it's just consistency, and I think there is also a lot of courage to believe that the things that you do are worth of that compromise. And this compromise can be very painful. I can say it from my own experience, that when you feel that you are actually there, your goal was to really be 100% of an artist, but then you discover that you have only 5 or 10 or 15% of your capacity to focus on that. That's a tricky thing. Well, it means that when we talk about comfort zone, then creative passion is one kind of comfort zone, or the creative work of creativity is one kind of comfort zone, but the comfort zone that life provides to you is something completely different. So the paradox is that the more you do, the less you do. And when I see the coaches or trainers in Estonian sports, then only, I don't know, below maybe 10% of them are doing it full time. Their talent, their mission or call for action is taking only 1/10 of the time. The rest is managing everything else. But nevertheless, we have 3% of GDP of creative entrepreneurs, creative industries. It's a huge amount. So I think this is courage, just against all odds, to do what you do. Another question is that, is there a plan B for them? Yes, of course there is a plan B, but they take the plan A, and I give them my full respect because of that. Nevertheless, if we try to ask ourselves that maybe there should be some sort of a checklist for them, that maybe some of them discover in their late 30s or, I don't know, late 40s that they didn't find the goal that they were after. Who should be there to remind them that there might be a plan B? I'm also, from time to time, standing in front of the auditoriums in universities. And usually I'm talking about project management, I'm talking about creative industries, writing business plans, finding the right strategic models for your ideas. And every time I ask them, how many of you know what they want to do in their life? They are already university students, 2nd year, 3rd year, 4th year. I ask them that, how many of you are here because they want to be a millionaire, or who want to really grow their companies in a really wide extent? how many of them you are here because you want to work as a consultant or in the public sector or as an expert? And how many of you are here because you just don't have any other place to be? Well, to be really honest, they don't know. Very often they just don't know. And I think that when we talk about the way how every one of us can here contribute is to give very honest feedback and leave our comfort zone of small talk and say to them sometimes that if you don't know in the beginning of the 4th year in your university what on earth will you do the next autumn, then it's the last time to think, why are you here? I really enjoyed the lecture that opened CreativeMornings Tallinn by Dan Mikin about the service design. And I really hope that this kind of service design also one day reaches universities, that where we can be more personal and more honest about the needs of a student who perhaps just, you know, needs to be reminded that this is just another, if it's just another routine to enter the university, buy yourself a MacBook and then help and hope that some moment your inspiration will arrive and your business plan just, you know, falls down from the sky. It won't happen. You will end up as a ordinary person with loads of disappointments on your shoulder. Another very interesting thing now just reminded me from the last lectures by Yrjö Ojasaar, who invented a new term. And I think it goes brilliantly together with the topic. It's a practical intelligence. It's about the way how we, you know, experience the drive and courage and all that. I think this also should be educated. This should be also part of our education. We should more leave that theoretical approach and take more of the practical experimental action in the universities to really show and prove that the obstacles that are out there are much higher than in the books on our tables. I give you a brief example. When tutoring a group in Helsinki with the students of project management, I gave them a very small exercise to create a 2 or 3 pages marketing plan for their own project. They were very simple projects, you know, like, I don't know, ice cream kiosk in the suburbs, or a small festival, or handicraft shop, or something like that. And most of them didn't manage to really do it. And they said, it's, you know, it's too simple. Because we just ended a management or a marketing course that dealt with the most difficult and demanding situations in the marketing field. But it didn't give them good enough fundamental sort of wisdom to really project a very easy plan how to sell ice cream in your neighborhood. So I think we should provide more such exercises and be consistent there. And of course, I think it's very important to have courage not to pretend. Because the society where we live today urges us to pretend very often, to be a part of some sort of concepts that we don't believe in. So if you ask that, does these students have plan B, then I say that yes, of course they have plan B. They have plan C, plan D, plan E. We just have to be honest enough to remind them and say that take another look into your portfolio. And if your portfolio is empty in the beginning of the 4th year, then you know, it's a good moment to reposition. And thirdly, are there any situations where you don't have plan B. And I say there are. And this is, I think, the biggest kind of courage. These are the situations where you just can't let go. I'm talking about the discussions and debates in the society, where I feel that everybody should step up and really say what they think. Maybe I'm too pessimistic, but I know a lot of people, also my friends abroad, who more and more use the word escapism because they just can't stand anymore. There is so much noise and some sort of, stupidity after stupidity, demagogical argument after another. And they just get tired, although they are not very old. They may be, they're young people, but they're just tired of that loud debate that is only targeted to another election campaign. But I think that here is, at least in our society, the crucial moments to really have a courage to not to escape, and say that if you don't say, then somebody else will. We shouldn't only talk about creativity and the resources of creativity among the creative professionals. This is another problem, by the way. That usually when I go to meetings where they discuss the potential of the creative minds in our society, then on the other side of the table there are the people who already know that. And they say, yes, of course, you're right. And everybody feels that, yes, we feel very strong. We feel like we have won because everybody in the room agrees. But then you leave the room and there is another office. There is an office with a person who makes huge decisions. And when you ask this person during the coffee break that, how do you feel about the economical impact of our talents, creative minds, then we said, you can sing and you can dance, but I mean, we are doing business here. And this is a problem. And I think this is the courage that we all need to not to get tired and explain again and again that there is no bigger capital for a small country than creative minds. And this is our only hope to survive as a well-functioning society. I think that it was Confucius who said that there are 3 moral values that everybody should honor. As you can guess, one of them is courage. The 2 others are wisdom, and by the way, creative economy and creative industries are only for the smart ones. The ones who just want to get something to eat and sleep somewhere and spend their lives without much of curiosity, they don't care much about the values of creative economy. And this is fine, because I'm not saying that all that is culture must be related to the creative industries, for instance. Some of the culture just flows and it's fine. So the one is wisdom, the second one is wisdom, and the third one is compassion. So I think that thinking about tomorrow, that is Good Friday, I wish you a lot of courage, a lot of wisdom, and at least same amount of compassion, and stay brave. Thank you very much.
So we have time for questions. We actually have about 20 minutes. So any questions? Ideas?
So why do you think that compassion is so important?
The question about compassion.
Yes, thank you. a very, I don't know, how do you agree? But I think that, and many times, at least I've felt it, that the creative process is a rather egoistic thing. At least in music, when you prepare a piece, then your first reflection is always very egoistic, and this is the ground that you take as your position. On the other hand, you're doing it for someone. Yes, I very often thought that how about the popularity? That when you work as a songwriter and you know that there is an industry that is called songwriting, and the people are there for days, starting in the morning and ending in the evening, just writing songs. And the industry is there to bring you wealth, to really seek popularity and introduce this music as much as possible. But there is a controversial thing with that. I mean, when you're writing a song, then at least in my experience, sometimes the popularity is one of the last things you think of. You're searching for something else. And I think that the link between your message and your audience does a lot with empathy. And I don't know if the compassion is the right word, but if like once again I go back to the Don Mickens lecture, that if you're not able to see that landscape through the eyes of the people who are around you, then your creative impact might be rather low. Maybe that is one way how to answer that. Thank you.
So more? Raise your hands.
Hi, thank you for a good speech. It takes some courage to come and speak. So maybe you can share some experience. What was the most courageous thing in your life? Like what take your some really serious words that this is I'm going to do? And maybe some tips there. But then you need to feel that you can do it and you should do it and no plan B.
When I graduated the Academy of Music, then for the last basically 20 years, I've been rehearsing. I was rehearsing the whole life. The whole of my life was rehearsing. It's quite an interesting thing, actually. You just go and rehearse all the time, and suddenly you feel that despite all of that rehearsing, a ghost is entering the room. You know what's the name of that ghost? Mediocracy. This was one of the most inspiring and frightful meetings of my life, when I gave the hand and say, "Hello, Mediocracy. So very not happy to meet you, but still you're here." And I remember that minute actually on the stage where I felt that if I don't do it now, then I will become a part of that mediocrity. And the moment I said to that mediocrity, this imaginary friend of mine, together with me on the stage, with Johann Sebastian, of course, as always, during the Christmas, then I discovered that there is somebody else behind that ghost of mediocrity. And this is another possibility, another stairway that goes up until there is no limit anymore. And this was the feeling that I felt when I entered the Academy of Music 6 years before that. So I came home. I told to myself, I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. I have to quit 90% of my positive emotions because I was addicted to music. I loved it. When I had my first free weekend, I thought I'm ill. If there is no rehearsal on Saturday morning, I think I'm disabled. Why am I home? What's going on? Is there a world for free or what's up? But still, I think again, maybe this is like a bit of egoistic story again. It's not brave. I'm sorry. It's just, I think it's a bit of honesty where I felt that at I'm 25, I'm able to take another book from the shelf and really open it and read it and understand the full language of it. And I've never regretted that. And yes, I've been on the stage after that as well, but I've never regretted that decision. And I don't think that I had to explain it to everybody, to no one. I felt that this is the right thing to do. But of course, I must say, there is one other kind of courage, one other kind of bravery that outlines all the rest. 3 years ago, I joined or was there on establishing a very small but important event for the families who have lost someone, their child, their loved ones. And when we had our first event, our first service, our first concert, and I entered the hall, then I understood that when we can talk about everything, we can talk about career, we can talk about injustice in building up our careers or whatever else, but there are some human qualities that there is some sort of courage that you can't describe, that just, takes you to a moment where you understand it without a single word.
Any more questions? I'm so sorry, I'm also just morning, I understand. It's hard to come up. So why you have, okay.
Hey, so you mentioned some negative things about the mood of escapism. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, don't you feel that actually escapism has been with us since, the age of television? Now it's just just got to a supersonic level with the internet. And do you feel, is there a way for us as a society to escape from the focus on entertainment and distractions instead of somebody else, something bigger? And is there any hope for it? Or we are, as humans, destined to just go to virtual reality and forget everything?
Thank you. I think it's a very important question. In Estonia, we have one huge privilege. If you take a car from in front of that building and you drive 20 minutes, then you arrive to a complete silence when there is no one. I remember a good story. One tourism manager told me once that they had a group from, I think it was from Hong Kong to Estonia, and they went to one farmhouse in the forest. And suddenly one member of the group was missing. So after the dinner, nobody could find the person. And then this manager or this tour guide went to search for that person, and he found him sitting there in the middle of the field, like sitting there and just being very confused, and said, "What's up? What's going on?" This person said, "I'm sorry, but I'm alone. First time in my life, outside of my room, without not a single person or a human voice or artificial sound around me." Well, that's the luxury what we have. Now, take the car, 20 minutes, northern coast, complete silence. Take your smartphone and throw it to the sea. Sit there on the rock and stay there until at least 3 questions come into your mind, like, what did I miss when trusting only social media apps? Why I'm feeling so strange? And what should I tell to the first person that I see when I return? I had this feeling first in 2004 when I went to Lapland and I experienced complete silence. I was there on the snow and I could literally hear my neck artery like beating. And since that, I'm very sorry, but I'm the last fan of like social media. I'm allergic to that because whenever I open it, I only hear noise. So I think that the escape from escapism begins from the escapism of leaving the chains that are so silently and in a very tricky way are keeping our minds in a way blocked. But of course, I'm sorry. There are certainly many positive qualities about social media, I'm sure. But sometimes I feel that compared to poetry, for instance, it's less.
You want to? Okay.
So thank you for this wonderful answer. But I was talking right now, and actually it's related to the whole topic of your talk. So you're talking more about individualistic courage. And right now you're talking more about individualistic choice to avoid social media, which everybody can take. But of course the tricky thing is, how do we do this in the society and culture that is based on the distractions, the system that is built on, the biggest companies that are built on making you spend as much time on internet as possible? And is there a way to avoid it? I don't know, I'm not sure if you're like the best person to ask this, because that's probably like government talk or something, but is there a way to do it with regulations? Do you believe that we as a society can change in this sense? Thank you.
I'm honest with you, I don't know. But one thing I know, that the essence of creativity and the essence of courage, they're both personal. Maybe there is collective courage, maybe there is collective creativity, maybe there is collective genius, but the essence of that is personal. So it all begins with the first step. And saying no to some of the comfort zones, just, saying no, thank you. I think that's all I can say. Thank you.
Okay, so we have time, I think, for 2 more questions. Does anyone came up with some idea of question in front? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My question is, again, following up on individual versus collective. Creative industry is very much like the creativity by committee sometimes. We just get into the room and we strategize and we come up with some ideas. And at the end of the day, it is really unclear whose idea was that. And what are your thoughts about this matter? Like individual or collective, where aren't we hiding behind the collective in order to express our own creativity? Just being creative during the work time instead of pursuing our own endeavors and stuff like that. Thank you.
Thank you. When I gave my first speech about creative industries, like 10 years ago, it was some sort of a conference in Riga. And then I was talking about the phenomenon of creative industries and the added value that it creates. And then one really angry-looking, I think, Swedish professor stood up and said that, isn't everything creative? Like, didn't already some Greek philosophers say that everything is creative and all the things? And, I don't agree with that. I think that there is enough like non-creative stuff around us. But when you ask about the the birth of the ideas or the ways how they appear, what I truly believe in is the environment. Because why do we do it so difficult? I mean, there are so many examples that just creating the right environment gives you a huge amount of new perspectives and again, courage to just say them out because you're not stuck in these routines. By the way, did you know that this kind of stuff like corridors were invented not too many years ago, like not too many centuries ago? Yes, when you think about the palaces of the royal palaces in Europe, then you don't find any corridors there. They didn't need any corridors. The corridors were needed for administrative like divisions. So let's skip the corridors and just try to create the environment that really gives us chance to present something creative. In terms of the question that is it like how problematic it is, that is it like a collective thought or individual thought? You know, there is now a huge already whole science about protecting your rights in a way to when you in the end of the day when you need to do that. But the first step that I believe in is that let's just help ourselves first to create that environment, and then let's see what's going to happen.
So we have time for one more question. Okay, people are showing me now.
Thank you. I would like to ask something very simple. What can be, let's say, a very minimal strategy in order to overcome the fear that will block eventually courage to do something?
You know, the venture capitalists or investors say that the first funding resource is this famous triple F, the friends, fools, and family. I think when you take the last one and the first one of that formula, skip the fools, just ask the friends, ask the family. In Estonia, this is a problem. You know, not too many people like meeting people. And when you already meet the people, then it's another step to talk with them, and then to be honest with them, to really say that, you know, I have this idea, but I'm not so sure should I tell you about it because it's a bit weird, you know, it's not out of the frame, and you know, just you know, I have the same problem. I'm afraid that most of my brilliant ideas are already forgotten because I didn't tell anyone and I didn't write them down, and now they're gone. So let's just. My advice would be that take this 3 person, or if you have 5, if you're 10, then if you have 10, then you're not Estonian anymore. But if you have 5, then it's okay, and just try to get some good feedback out of them. I think here I believe in this design formula that your target group is the one who owns the truth. Thank you so much for your attention and patience. Thank you.
Thank you.